So we are live, guys. This is amazing. This is amazing. Hey, hello, everybody.
Hello.
How are you guys doing? You look good.
Thank you. We're doing well.
This is going to be so much fun. So I don't know if for me, I don't know if what we need to say is Happy Black Mental Health Day. But what I would say is I'm glad to see all of you here as we celebrate having Black Mental Health Day, because this is a topic in our community that has been challenging for us. So the opportunity for us to have folks to kind of, just have a chat about it as if we're at the dinner table. Just think that we're at the dinner table, okay, without the meal, all right? Right? All you have to do is think of grandma's best meal, right? Or in Zamor's case, think about his best meal because he's also a chef, right?
Yeah.
So, and he comes from a family that knows how to cook, let me tell you. So we're going to have a lot of fun. This is going to be very low keyed. I'm not going to do all your bios. I'm actually going to ask you guys to just, introduce yourselves. I'll start with me first. My name is Sophia Brown Ramsey. I am the ED for BCAN, the Black Community Action Network. I also have my own business called SBR Inspires because I do speaking and like to hang with people. Like to do some consulting. So, I am so pleased to have Keep Six as a partner with us. The work of BCAN we could never do alone. Anything that we've been able to accomplish, we could not do that by ourselves. The way in which we've been able to do it is to make sure that we partner with folks, right? We partner with other people, partner with other organizations, because we know that collaboration to anything is key. Y'all remember, it takes a village.
Yes.
Right? And so this is why we're here tonight, okay? I want to introduce you to my co-host, the beautiful Jada, and she is going to just tell you a bit about herself, and then we're going to kind of get started.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Jada. I'm a Ryerson grad student, and I'm currently doing my placement with BCAN. I'm fortunate enough to be doing my placement with BCAN. I'm actually doing research related to the criminalization of Black girls in schools. And I'm just excited to be a part of this conversation. And I hope this conversation can be normalized in our community. So this is really exciting for me.
That's right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jada. And Karen, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
My name is Karen Samuels, and I am one that has gone through some mental challenges. Myself had a journey through it, not understanding what was happening to myself. And now that I've gotten more clarity, support, and actual professional help, I now advocate, motivate, and inspire others like myself in the Black community. It's funny that Jada said normalize. This is normal. And it's now, what can we do to get through this and to deal with what's happening with us and be okay with sharing it and speaking about it and asking for help, knowing that we won't be criticized or stigmatized or judged.
Mm-hmm. Right. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Zamora, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Zamora Johnson. I am a cinematographer based in
we've lost you. Zamora, you're back on mute, love.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry about that. So in case you missed it, I'm a cinematographer based in Toronto. Among many other things, I work in the fitness industry, and I do a lot of creative projects throughout the city as well. Last year, literally right before COVID, I held a art gallery exhibit called Elevate that was focused on mental health within the Black community, especially with Black men. So I commissioned a lot of artists to create pieces of art that depicted what mental health looked like to them within our own community. And it could be through a variety of different mediums. It was a great event. So I've become sort of an advocate over that over the last couple of years. And that's a little background on me.
Thank you, Zamora. I appreciate it. Glad that you're here. Thank you so much. IJ, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi. I am a 15-year-old entrepreneur. I own my own clothing brand called Get Drip. I started it when I was 13 years old, and I've been working with six for a while now. I do a lot of six clothing. So yeah, I print on a lot of shirts and a lot of sweaters. And for me, my clothing brand is about showing kids who are also in my situation, because my father's incarcerated, and he's been incarcerated ever since I was young. And one of the main things I wanted to do is show other kids who are in my situation that they're able to do whatever they find. They just need to find the support and the strength to do it.
Okay, listen, I'm stopping right here. The young man is 15. 15, entrepreneur at 15. I'm going to say right here on our stage right now, we're going to clap him out together. Let's do it. Let's do it. That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, listen, y'all, I'm not saying that you're anything less than, okay? But when you're 15 and
Yes.
you focus in that way, it's a cause for celebration. It's a cause. So I'm hugging you out, my friend. Hugging you. It's amazing. Last but not least, you guys, I'd like Dr. Joan to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. It is so good to be here with you. I am a psychotherapist in Brampton, and I like to say, and so much more. I'm an author. I wrote a book. It's called 490, Forgive and Live Fearlessly. I am just on the way to publishing a companion to that book, which is a daily forgiveness journal. And I'm also the co-editor of a book called Becoming: The Journey to Love, which is a compilation of stories by women talking about their journey from the struggle all the way to that place of just being settled and stabilized. So I also speak, and I'm a truth, forgiveness, and reconciliation, let's say, practitioner or specialist. I have a love for my Black people, and I have a real passion for seeing us heal. I think we need to take in our own hands the power to heal ourselves. And so that's what my work is all about. It's wonderful to be here with you tonight.
Thank you so much. And guys, the wonderful and very handsome, dare I say, my husband's in the basement. Brian has just joined us. So, Brian, we're just kind of introducing ourselves to our chat here in our chat. So, would you mind just introducing yourself, please?
Okay, my name is Brian Hood. I'm a carpenter, sole proprietor of Tooth and Nail Contractors. I was invited by a good friend of mine by the name of Richard Miller, and I thought it would be pretty dope to come on and, just share our insights and our feelings towards mental health.
Awesome. We're glad that you're here, Brian. Thank you so much for coming out and just jumping to the cause. This is really important work.
Yes.
And it's important work that Keep Six is doing. Keep Six, as you guys know, is on the cutting edge of innovation. They have been doing some spectacular work, and its founder, Richard Miller, is like no other. This man will take you wherever you want to go. He's very focused. And again, he is somebody that wants to work collaboratively. He wants to bring everybody to the table. And so this is why it's such a great fit for BCAN, when we have, these types of organizations that we could come together and do this work together. Okay, why mental health? Why are we thinking that this is important at this time? I can tell you a few things. We are going through a two, not one, but two pandemics, right? We recognize that, yes, COVID is here and it's alive and well, right? But there's the other thing. Anti-Black racism has been a pandemic for our community for a long time. It is after the death of George Floyd that folks seem to really see that, we must make change. And so this is what's happening right now. And so the people that's going to make the changes, it's all of us. It's all of our voices, because our stories might be similar, but we're all very unique. Like I can't tell Karen her story It's only her that can tell her story. You can't tell Sophia's story, right? We need each other to kind of get this work done. And so we thought this would be a perfect opportunity, because this is International Black Mental Health Day, to kind of have this chat and invite folks, to make comments, ask questions, and see what we could do to kind of make something happen. We're going to focus on 3 things here. One, these wonderful folks that you guys are seeing will tell their story. That's what they're going to do tonight, is let you know what their story is. And I bet you that you're going to find within their stories some similarities in terms of what might be happening to you. We want to make sure, as my beautiful co-host has said, look, we want to normalize this. This is happening everywhere. And so this is an opportunity for us to do this. And then the other piece, we want to tell the story, and then we want to kind of have that chat about the stigma in the Black community about mental health, right? But last but not least, guys, there's nothing worse than talking without solutions, without resources, right? This is one of the reasons why Dr. Joan is on this call with us today, this conversation, because she has some solutions, right? But I also know that each of us within ourselves have some solutions as well. So let's have a talk. So why don't we, Jada, why don't you take over and just kind of invite our folks to begin telling their story?
Sure. So can we start with Zamar? Can you tell us your experience, your personal experience, as it relates to mental health, maybe some challenges you faced?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think as a Black man that's grown up playing sports the majority of my life, and currently, I mentioned before, I'm involved in the fitness industry. I'm a boxing coach and amateur competitor. Being involved in that realm, the way we address mental health, specifically in that world, is can be at times, toxic, but it's become normalized to be that way, right? Basically, you're not supposed to show like any type of emotion. You got to be tough all the time, that type of stuff, and then it feeds into other areas of your life, right? So I've always been kind of the person to speak up against that, because what ends up happening is, if you're an athlete your entire life, that becomes your whole identity. And then when you're no longer involved in the sport or playing on a regular basis, you almost have like this identity crisis, trying to figure out who you are and what you're supposed to do. Right. So that's like one of the things that I've dealt with, but over time I've just become at peace with the journey versus that one segment of my life, knowing that that wasn't the only thing that I could do, which is why now I do so many different things. But then probably the biggest challenge that I've dealt with regarding mental health has been the loss of my brother, right? 2 years ago, my brother passed away. He had taken his own life due to like struggles he had with mental health, right? Which I had come to find out after he passed away. Which after it happened, I did a lot of research. I did what a lot of people would probably do in that situation. And the more I talked about it, it came to light that a lot of people were struggling and just decided to not talk about it specifically within our community, because there is a stigma around it. And I'm sure it's something we'll get into as the conversation progresses tonight. But that was a big wake-up call for me, because I remember myself saying, along with a lot of my friends, that my brother was like the last person you'd imagine that would do something like that. You know what I mean? But I think when you have conversations like the ones we're having tonight, and especially the types of conversations I was having after my brother passed, like I said, I realized that a lot of people are going through something, like every single person that you see out here, they're going through something. It can be small or it could be really big. The problem is a lot of people don't want to talk about it, whether it's because they think it's a sign of weakness, or because they're scared, or they don't want to be judged. It could be a multitude of things. But my goal has been really just to continue having those conversations and allowing people to feel like this really isn't that weird. It's really not that uncomfortable. This is actually very normal to go through things as a human. You're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days. And that's part of your journey. It's supposed to happen. What shouldn't be happening is us as humans basically internalizing those things and not talking about it, because at some point it's going to come up in different ways, right? So that's really been my personal journey. I lost my brother 2 years ago, and since then I feel like I've definitely changed as a person. I wouldn't be like 2 years ago, I don't think I would have been in a panel like this, right? Because it didn't force me to really revisit my life and think about things that I need to do for my own mental health and people that I care about. So it's been a rough journey, but it's been a good journey as well. That's the important thing. That's the main thing I'm taking from it right now.
Everything brings us an opportunity to look inside, an opportunity to kind of see what else is out there, what else can we do. You touched on something, Zoltamore, if I could just spend just a little bit more time with you.
Yeah.
And you said that your brother, folks would say your brother would be the last person, right, that they think would actually take his own life.
Yeah.
What does that mean when you say that? What was your brother? Who was your brother? What was this young man like? Folks to say, you know what? He's good. He's good.
Yeah, like my brother was basically, he was actually like loved by everyone. He was, the Joker. He was always like I couldn't walk down the street with him in Toronto without people saying what's up to him, and he was like younger than me. So it was like pretty like an interesting dynamic to see how people loved him. And he was just into everything. Like you couldn't talk to him about any subject that he just wasn't well versed in. Likable by a lot of people. So it was very shocking to a lot of people, right? Because most people didn't see this coming. But I look back on a lot of things in hindsight, and there wasn't really too many tells, right? Which is the thing that I've come to learn is common with a lot of people who are going through similar situations like that, because they're too concerned about the people around them. It might sound backwards, but they're too concerned with the people around them and who they love rather than themselves, right? So they don't want people to know how they're feeling because they don't want those people to worry until it becomes too late. And my brother was like very much an audiophile, like into music. So he used to send me different albums all the time. And there was this one album by this British R&B artist called Loyal Carter. And the album was called Not Waving, But Drowning, right? And it's like this, it's a beautiful album. And I think the artist is talking about like his own relationship with his brother and, different experiences he had in his life. And there's an interlude on the album where they talk about, it's just like a woman who's a therapist. And she's talking about this story where there was a man that was like loved by a lot of people. And he was in the ocean one day, like at the beach. And to the people on the sand, it looked like he was like waving at them, like joking around. But really he was drowning, like asking for help. Right. And it was like a metaphor for how there's a lot of people in life right now who are either the life of the party or everything on surface level is really great. But beneath you don't know what's going on. Right. So what I took away is that, I think we can all speak to that. How many times do you say, someone asks you how you're doing, and you say, "No, I'm good," but really, like you had something early in the day that's annoying you or like upsetting you? We're just so conditioned to actually just give these premeditated responses, instead of telling people how we actually feel, right? So that's one of the things we gotta work on changing.
Thank you for that. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing. I
Okay.
noticed, Karen, you really
Yes.
you were listening intently to Zamor and his conversation around this. Tell us a little bit about your story, if you don't mind.
Sure. Zamora, I'm just everything that he's saying, I have some kind of relation to it. With me, growing up, I think for me, the mental illness that came in, I didn't know of the illness part. I heard about mental,
Yeah.
and then mental you equated with crazy. So that's all I knew growing up, mental and crazy. So when I started to, if I really look back, it happened when I was 4, and that's just confusion. That's what started with my mental journey, confusion of who I was and my placement. And from there, things have been going through, but I hid a lot of things, as Zamora said. I hid a lot of things because we were also taught, just also as Black women, just like men have to be strong Black women. Well, you toughen it up, you get through it. And I was also grown up, you don't tell anybody your business and you don't beg nobody for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if things happen, you fix what you need to fix and you don't beg nobody. So that's it. So
Yeah.
when I, fast forward, I went through some challenges. They said I used to talk to myself. I still talk to myself because I'm okay with it now. I was told I would go to places and not know how I got there. What everyone didn't know is I was having seizures, and the seizures came on because of the stress and the anxiety. I didn't know when I started to shake what was happening to my body. I would go into these extreme moods. 1 minute I'll cry, 1 minute I'll laugh with you. 1 minute I'll just get this extreme anger. Again, those are some of the signs. And then I started to have more seizures, which led up to a full memory loss. I've been driving for 20 years, forgot how to drive. Didn't remember my daughter's middle name, didn't remember people, didn't know where I went, how I was going, and I realized something was wrong. Then I started to physically change. And I think that's where I started to be questioned by people. What's going on? How are you? And you get that, how are you? Well, I'm good. How are you? Oh, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Are you okay? But I couldn't see what they were seeing from the outside. So I physically dropped weight. Then in my Black community, I had people and family members telling people I was crazy. I was on drugs. I was drinking. I don't even know how to hold a cigarette. I don't know how to drink alcohol, never grew up on it. And yes, there was something going inside, but I felt a judgment. You're always asking me, how am I doing? And you heard this. So I pulled away. I pulled away from everyone and I was dying inside, but I couldn't tell anyone because, again, I'm not going to beg anybody for anything. And you're not going to label me crazy because I know I'm not crazy and mental. And a lot of people didn't know. They didn't know. They weren't educated. And I wasn't educated until I ended up on the bus and I heard somebody talking about mental illness and they were just talking about what they were diagnosed with. And I was overhearing them and it sounded similar to what I was going through. I mean, I would have dreams, I swear, and wake up from the dream. I'm always running from something or something happened and I go back to sleep and I have a continuation of the dream. It's the weirdest thing. And then, through just this whole battle of just getting to know myself, finally at work, they helped me get counseling and therapy, which I went through about 5 first because I didn't want to embrace it because how I grew up again, if you're going to a counselor or a therapist, a doctor, they said a psychiatrist, that's equated with craziness. And I didn't want to go through it. However, I think after about the 4th or 5th one, that person actually sat down and talked to me and just goes, just scream. And I was like, what? And they just scream, just let it out. And they said, okay, 1, 2, just take a deep breath and scream. I think they were even frightened with the scream that I screamed. I was frightened. And that was when I started to get things out. I started to talk about, they put me in an open place, and it was a non-judgmental place about what's going on. And they asked me to talk and let me talk about me. And that was when I finally realized, okay, there's something here. We got to the doctors. We realized I had epilepsy. And also I struggle with I struggle with some emotions. I struggle with feelings. I struggle with confusion, and we had to get to the bottom root of that. And because of therapy, because of the support I had from people that some people didn't know about this, but they came along my journey to find out about this. And what can we do to help you through this? And with that is where I am in this place right now. And I'm not going to tell everybody it doesn't get fixed. It's not, I still struggle with my memory. I still struggle with getting out words. I still struggle with my emotions. But I have a lot of tools now, like affirmations, journaling. And there's one meditation that I was listening to, and it says, if you're going to fall forward. Don't fall backwards, because I'm not going back there. And there are times that I said, okay, I have to take a moment and I'm going to stay where I am. I'm not going backwards, but I have to stay where I am right now and concentrate to move forward. With COVID-19 coming now, I had certain outlets that I can go to. The gym was one. Walking outside was one. Well, we got restricted. And then I went back into a place again, feeling all crammed up. So I had to turn around and find different things. Like, you know what I mean? Like I've never gone, I had to step outside of my box. I don't walk in the winter. I'm not a winter person. I got out and started to walk in the wintertime. I'm looking up at these beautiful crystals, the snow below me, the trees that we go by. I'm seeing things differently now. And because of what I went through, I really wanted someone to listen to me and not compare me to other people. Sometimes when I used to say to people, oh, Harry, I'm not doing well. You know, everybody's not doing well. Listen to what I said. I'm not doing well. I'm having a hard time. I never asked you if everyone was having a hard time. I never said that. Why couldn't you just say, you know what? What are you having a hard time with? You know, how can I help you with that, instead of telling me what everybody else is going through? And that's where therapy came in for me. They didn't tell me about everyone else. They told me about me. And Zamar said something where somebody asks you how you doing, I'm fine, and you're really not fine. I hid a lot of things, but that was some of the reasons why I hid a lot of things, because when I did decide to reach out, I got, well, everybody's going through, you know what, toughen up and do that. That is one of the worst things I would say for anyone to say to anybody. If I'm telling you and I'm afraid to open up, there's fear to be judged. And I just said to you, something's not right. I'm not feeling okay. And you say that, well, everyone's going through COVID. I'm going to shut down again. So now I've turned into an advocate. I actually reach out to those that I see that, you know, they're struggling, or they've reached out to me. Let's figure out something here. And let me get you to the help that you may need, that may help me, give you little pointers, but let me get you to that professional help, and this will work as this worked for me. Now you can tweak it, do it your way, because not everybody's way works for everybody, but there's something that can help. And that basically is my story. That's where I am right now, where I know me, I'm okay with me, and I know that I'm going to struggle, but I also know my outlets. I also know where I can channel that energy. And I also know that when I get to that place, it's okay to step, just pause for a minute, just pause, figure everything out, and then let's move forward.
Awesome. Go ahead, Jada.
Thank you so much for sharing, Karen. You addressed so many things, but I think something that stood out for me was the stigma that kind of prevented you from seeking help. And I think we're going to get into that a little later. But I wanted to go to IJ and get your perspective. Being a 15-year-old entrepreneur, what is your personal story?
Well, growing up with having an incarcerated parent it can affect a lot of people. But myself, I didn't really let it affect me. But for other youth, I know it can affect a lot of youth, because youth, you know, they suffer from a lot of like say, sorry, yeah, sorry, that's okay. Yeah, sorry. Me myself, I didn't really let the fact that my father was incarcerated to affect me, because I knew that there was nothing I can do to change the situation that he was in and I was in. So that's why I sort of used it to create something better for myself, and try to use my situation to help other people as well, and show them that if there's nothing you can do to change the situation, then it's not really worth sitting there and dwelling on that problem. Because we all have to move on and move on to better things, so I didn't allow myself to sit there and be sad. I tried making something better for myself, and showing other people that they can do the things that I can do as well. But yeah, youth, they experience a lot of mental health issues, especially because being a young black individual, society likes to look at us as, they're gonna grow up to be criminals. They always pre predetermine, or what am I trying to say? They just set that label for when they grow up. They just think that they're gonna become, be a statistic, and be like everybody else, when that's not really true. Um, when my dad was a kid, he he had a lot of mental issues, especially because of the household he grew up in. Um, he didn't really receive much attention from his parents, and when it was attention, it wasn't positive attention. It wasn't the support and love he needed. So growing up, he had a lot of anger within him, and he dealt with trauma, abandonment, depression, PTSD, and he was labeled a behavioral kid, and he was labeled as someone who's gonna, grow up and do bad things, which is something that people need to realize. We need to be better at recognizing what's happening inside of the head of a youth, instead of just instantly labeling them as, crazy, as Karen was saying, and they have problems and things like that. And we need to recognize the symptoms of them being withdrawn or seeking attention.
Mhm.
Um, the other day, my mom's friend, he brought up this scriptural example. His name is Dr. Mark Daniel, and it was on his radio station.
I think we may have.
He's frozen.
We might as well go on to. There's a lot of things in there that I heard that was really interesting. I mean, I have to say this young man is pretty powerful.
Hello.
Oh, there he is. There he is.
But yeah, so yeah, back to the story. So every couple of days, his family would bring a paralyzed man up to the temple, and he would ask for gold and silver, and Peter and John were there. They're some important people from the Bible, and Peter looked at him and he said, "Stand up." He said, "Walk." And the man stood up and he walked, and he actually started leaping. So this example stood out to me, because if you help somebody and you look out for them, it will not only help them, but it would also allow them to reach achievements that you can never see possible before. And they can do big things. They just need to, receive that support and that help. So that's another thing with youth, and youth having mental issues. They need to receive that support and help from their parents. They just need to look out for them. They need to recognize the things that are happening with, their children, and instead of just neglecting them, and other things like that. So yeah, for me personally, I didn't really allow my father being incarcerated to affect me mentally. I tried my best to use it to help other people. Yeah, that's my story.
You're awesome. Jade, I'm just going to jump in for 1 second. I know that you have something, I definitely know you have something you need to say to this young man, but I heard you say something that just triggered something for me, IJ, this idea that parents kind of need to pay more attention. They need to kind of broaden their perspective a little bit. It's sometimes really hard because I'm a Jamaican, my background, it's like, if your young person comes up and says, I got some problems, or I think I need to go to a counselor. First thing you're going, but wait, you have hosts, right? You live in the house, you have food. I'm sending you to school, all of these kinds of things. And so we're sometimes not on that level thinking about them. And I'm bringing this up because now with COVID, so many of our young people are studying at home. It's a different world. And you think, well, they'll be home. It's a little bit easier. My girls, one is first year, second year, they both hate it. And then we found that they were both in their rooms so much. And one of my daughters are very much, she's a loner. This kid does everything. She teaches herself to play the piano. She's that kind of person, right? She does things on her own. But I was finding that it was too much. So we started to kind of have folks come downstairs, and I'm like, guys, everybody has their own computer. We can sit in the room together. We can stay in the family room and do our work together. Just so there's like Karen, going for the walk. We need a little different kind of scenery because folks were eating. Everything is being done in the room and studying. And the studying, I'm told by them, is so much harder. So you've given us, even within your story, which I love how you guys have kind of talked about your story, but in your story, you've given us some kind of solution as well. You've given us a little bit of nugget to say, maybe you need to try something else. So thank you so much for that. Jada, back to you.
Yes, thank you so much, IJ. You're so inspiring. I love your story, and please continue to reach out and do what you're doing. With that being said, I would like to invite Brian to share your story with us.
Yeah. Where do I even start? I mean, I grew up. I think the biggest problem with mental health is a lot of people who are experiencing and going through mental health, they don't know. And that's the case with me. When I was growing up, I didn't think there was a problem, right? I didn't know that I knew I had anger issues growing up. Always very angry. I got into a lot of fights. I was always fighting. I was always in a fight. Never talked to anybody about what I was going through, how I was feeling. Um, I got into so many problems to a point where I started, skipping school, hanging around the wrong crowd, which eventually led me to be incarcerated for a couple of years. And all throughout these years, I didn't think that there was anything wrong. I thought that my feelings, I thought that my decisions were valid. Even when I was incarcerated, I got into many, many different fights. And it wasn't until one of the reverends or the pastors there sat me down one day and asked me, "Why are you so mad?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like this is normal. What do you mean? I'm just if somebody does me wrong, like, this is how I'm supposed to do to handle it, And it wasn't until she really asked me that question until I actually really started to look within myself. And what was found was that not only was I suffering from like anxiety, I was suffering from PTSD, had all these anger issues, right? And it wasn't really brought to light until I actually really looked within myself. I don't know what to say. So that's my story with mental health. Even with the therapy that was provided to me, I was always so skeptical about who I talked with and like what I could say without getting me into more problems, more trouble. And so that kept me very like as an introvert throughout all these years. So even growing up, I was very silent, really never really talked to anybody, never talked to my brothers, never talked to my sisters, never talked to my mom. And I grew up without a father figure in my life. And you know, after going through therapy, I realized that that had a big impact on me.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
just like how everybody else said, the social norm is for me to be strong. I can handle anything. You know, God won't give you too much that you can handle, right? And that's true to a certain extent. But when you're really bottling it up, I mean, you know, it explodes at any time. And that was the case with me. Um, I would always keep to myself. And I mean, now I see a therapist every week, every other week. I'm able to talk about what's on my chest. Um, it's a beautiful feeling. I can't express to you or formulate the words of how much relief I'm able to achieve, or the gratitude that I have to give now that I'm able to just actually open up and speak. And that was another reason why I think Richard Miller even put me on here, because I always never used to speak. I never really used to talk. And I think I think a lot of it has to do with, I'm a very strong believer in in traumatic events being stuck in us for years to come. I mean, I'm talking even before slavery, even slavery times. I feel like the trauma that our ancestors has experienced has embedded in our bones. You know, it follows us all towards this day. And you know, growing up, I'm living in a society which thinks I'm a minority, which has all these horrible things to say about me. You know, just because of the color of my skin, and that plays a large, it has a large impact on one's mental health. And even when I was incarcerated, that was some very tough times. You know, you have to really be strong in order to get through it. I mean, you have guards that are treating you like you're nothing more than garbage.
Mhm.
You have other inmates inside there who are suffering from mental health, who don't know how to deal with their emotions. You're all piled up together with them. And so it's really tough. And, you know, you experience a level of trauma going through things like that. And if you're not able to express yourself and talk about it, then it's going to lead to problems. It's going to lead to an accumulation, just like how Zamora said, and it'll explode when we least expect it. So yeah, my story is basically me not knowing that I had a problem until I actually took the time, or that pastor took the time to really want to get to know me and really try to get me to speak, you know. And I found out so many things, and I'm so grateful. And you know, gratitude has been one of my main things in life now, is to always be grateful. Because if you're not being grateful for the things that you do have, then you're stressing about the things that you don't have, or you're upset about the things that you wish you could be doing. So, and that's how I move forward, is to always be grateful. That's one of my main objectives in life, is no matter what's going on, to be grateful, and always tell myself, not why is this happening to me, but why is this happening for me. I know it sounds a little cliche, but it's true. It's helped me, and I'm grateful for a lot. And yeah, that's basically my story in a nutshell. I mean,
Wow. Brian, you are an inspiration. You are an inspiration. I have to tell you how I love your strength. Love your strength. It literally, it just kind of comes off on the screen. I could feel that energy. I can feel that you're holding all of us, up. And you're right in talking about generational trauma. It's there. It's alive and well. I am so thankful for your candidness. As a man and as a Black man, our Black men go through so much. And one of those things, where folks are thinking that they're difficult people to be around. You know what I'm saying? The Black man that had, walking down the street, and folks are grabbing on their purses. So you're made to feel like you're always, you're not good. You're not, you're a monster. You're not supposed to be around. You shouldn't be around certain people. Certain people don't want you with other folks. It's a really hard situation for our Black men, and so for you to speak so candidly and let folks know that there is actual strength in going to a therapist, talking to someone, talking it out. And I'm grateful. I'll stay on that. I'm grateful to Keep Six, to Richard, for making sure that you're with us today. Really, I want to thank you for that. I want to come back. I want to go to Dr. Joan, but I also want to speak to a couple of the gentlemen. I want to go back, maybe ask Zamor, what did he see, or what did you see? Because we hear with our eyes and our ears. And what did you see and feel in Brian's and on IJ's stories? But before I do that, I want to introduce you guys to this amazing woman, Dr. Joan. We just kind of came together by another friend, and guys, only to find out this can only happen in Jamaica. We're actually cousins. We're actually cousins. It's really cool. Dr. Joan, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and just maybe speak to us a little bit. Let's do two things. Let's hear your story and talk to us about what you've heard, as a practitioner.
Right. So, I'll begin with the last person that spoke, and that was Brian. And Brian said something that I know is true, and we all have felt it, that the traumas transcend the generations, that they are present in our blood, in our DNA, and also in memories when we can access them. And so I've moved through my own journey. Now, Zamor said, we're supposed to move through this. This life is not just this pretty space that we're all in. And what I want to let you know that is in my practice, what I have come to discover is there are 3 pivotal moments in time that we are all supposed to move through. These are traumatic moments that happen for a specific purpose. And when we are able to actually deal with those 3 moments, now those 3 moments can have what I call ripple effects, but those 3 moments are then going to kind of look like a repeat. Like it's kind of like you're coming around in a circle and you're constantly seeing the same thing. And it's because you're supposed to do something so that you transcend that moment. And then the next one and the next one. Sometimes they're linked and sometimes they are totally independent events. So my 3 moments, my first moment began when I was 3 years old. And it's a memory that many of us have. I lived in Jamaica, and I remember being at the airport and my mom getting on that airplane and leaving, like so many of the Jamaican moms did in the 70s. And so she gets on the plane and she leaves. Now, it's a pivotal moment for me, but my twin sister, who is also present, it was not a pivotal moment for her. My brother, who was 2 at the time, it wasn't a pivotal moment for him. He doesn't even have a memory of that. But I remembered it. And all of my life, that was a memory and a moment for me, even though at 3, I probably couldn't totally verbalize how much I missed my mother. It was rather traumatic for me, her leaving. So like I said, for some people, this is a traumatic moment. And for others, you just go on with life, And so that's the important thing to also remember, is that a trauma is not so much about the event. A trauma is more about the response to the event. So you might be in a car accident, and for me, that's not a traumatic event. But for you, your response, your body gets moving, your heart is totally in that, like out here space. And you begin to respond in what we call the fear response mode. And so for others, though, something like a beating is a traumatic moment, or a car accident. So my first moment is when I'm 3, I'm watching my mother leave. My next moment, as we are supposed to come into what I call the promised land, so our Canada, like you go into foreign and all of that stuff that we all move through as young children when we're supposed to reconnect with my mother. The same week that we're supposed to reconnect with my mother, my brother, he and I is kind of like skipping down the road. We're happy, you know, we're going to foreign. And so we're walking along the road. We see this car coming. We get on the bank and we're waiting for the car to go by, but the car doesn't go by. The car instead hits my brother. And that's a pivotal moment for me. One of those screaming, no, my brother, don't die kind of moments. And so that's another traumatic moment for me. But in that same week, I would now migrate to Canada, leave my brother behind, and he would follow us a little bit later. And no one would know that I would have PTSD, like, because I've just left the people who know me, and I've come now to a mother who doesn't know me, and a whole bunch of people that are going to not interpret my behavior as a traumatic response. Rather, they are just going to see this as, you know, she's a little bit strange in the way that she might communicate, or she gets angry often, or she's a very sensitive child. No, I've been traumatized, and I have never experienced this before, and I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know how to tell anyone what it is I'm experiencing. Another thing that would happen is, as I transition to Canada, and I'm very excited about transitioning to Canada, I happen to be a very bright person. So I overcome these challenges. I just kind of move through them, you know? And that's one of the things that I often have expected people around me to do, is just move through it, you know? And so I go through my high school years, and I come to about age 15, and you know, transitioning to Canada, and especially living with my mother, is a challenging kind of home. Mm-hmm. We grew up with a grandmother who was extremely caring, a grandfather who was extremely caring. We knew what love looked like. And then we came to this foreign land, and all of a sudden the love disappeared. And we had a very angry mom who was also suffering from a lot of traumatic experiences from her childhood. And so a lot of that showed up in our home, a very violent home compared to kind of like that very lovely home, you know, you had back in Jamaica. And so, whereas a lot of people would describe their home back home as terrible, mine was like perfect. Couldn't complain about my grandmother or my grandfather at all. Then I come, and I'm now with a mother who is so unhappy, so violent, so verbally abusive. And now I have to deal with that. And so I have another pivotal moment in my teenage years where I receive a beating. And it's one of these, like, for some people, a beating is not a big deal. But for me, a beating violates my very soul. And so that moment was so traumatizing for me. Again, my sister, my twin sister, was present. And for her, it was a totally different response. And for me, it tore my soul to pieces. In that moment, that very night, and I'm going to talk to Zamor. Zamor had a brother who committed suicide. And I remember that very night making so many decisions because of that trauma. And I remember saying to myself, I will never have children, because if this is what parenting is like, I never want to have children. I remember saying, if this is what life is like, I do not wish to live it. I remember saying, I am not worth it. I'm not lovable. I said all of these things, and I have a very good memory, and I can recall these things. And I said them, and I remember making those decisions, like point by point by point by point. I just spoke to myself as I cried myself to sleep that night, and those were the things that I spoke. Like I said, I'm a bright person. I push through, I go on, right? But these decisions are made in that moment, and that's where I am. And so I continue on, I go to university, you know, and one of the things that becomes very important to me is the mental health. I go through nursing school, I move on, I do my master's, and the whole time I'm focused on mental health, right? And then I go on, I do my PhD. I actually study PTSD, depression, I'm studying anxiety, and I'm looking at what are all the things that are actually connected to people recovering or not recovering. And the whole time as I'm going through my PhD, I'm going, I gotta find the answer. I gotta find the answer to this question. What is the thing that will absolutely help not just one person, not just 95%, but 100% of the people recover? So my own life journey became a study, not only of me, but of my mother, of all the other people that have experienced violence. And so it's a very personal kind of journey for me. And so when I happened to come upon this forgiveness that was created by a lady called Candace Blakely, and then I began to look at forgiveness, not from the perspective that she looked at it from, but from a Christian perspective. And I began to weave in my own spiritual understandings, and I began to pray for just the wisdom and all of that stuff that comes along with that. I then began to just see how forgiveness, and a specific type of forgiveness, and the way that we process and become conscious of the decisions that we make, how that actually undoes all of these blocks that are actually pent up in our bodies. So as Karen began to talk, and she talked about, the journey of just figuring out what is normal and what is not normal, the confusion, all of that stuff I was connecting with. And then as IJ was talking about his dad, and I could see IJ making that decision, that's not going to be me. I'm going to do this better. I'm going to help. I'm going to make sure that people recover. I'm going to make sure that I do it so that other people can come behind me and do it. So you can make those decisions that are like pivotal, and they can take you on a journey of actually then committing suicide, or you can make a decision that brings you on a journey that then brings you to the other side. It's the decision that we all make in the moments that wound us that is actually then going to play itself out until we make the decision to go the other direction. And so the process that I now move folks through, they'll be experiencing things like depression, anxiety, PTSD. And now I put it out there, 3 sessions. That's what you need. 3 intensive sessions with me. The depression will be gone. Anxiety is about 6 sessions as opposed to 3. Then I teach you how to do this on your own. So I make you independent of me. I'm not looking for you to stay as a long-term client. I'm looking for you to become independent of me. And as you begin to practice this mode of forgiveness that I teach and that I do in my own practice, what you find is the normal that we sometimes assign to these symptoms, that we can then actually rid ourselves of them. We don't actually have to stay with them. But it is a transformation journey and a spiritual journey that we are all moving through that we also need to be aware of. Sometimes we counsel, we make it a mental health and emotional issue. But the journey that I move my clients through is, at first, it's emotional. But then it's a transformation of the personal as well as the spiritual.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Oh my goodness. I love the way you kind of weaved in all of our conversation, and you were able to kind of see the similarities, but also the difference.
Yes.
Is what Karen spoke about. I want to invite Zamor, as you listen to, and IJ, I want you to kind of think about this as well as the men on the show today. Because Karen and we're going to chat, because we roll that way. But I kind of want to just concentrate on you guys for a little bit. What is it that you heard in Brian's story that captured you, that made you think, hey, that makes sense to me? I feel that, I've seen it, anything. What was it that, Zamor, I'm going to invite you to consider.
Yeah, the thing that stuck out the most to me from Brian's story is how, like, growing up, you thought your feelings that you were having, like, they were valid. Like, this is how I'm supposed to react to this situation, right? And there was no really deep unpacking of that. Because I didn't do that myself until I got much older in life. I had to have a traumatic experience happen in my life in order for me to take a step back and re-examine all the feelings that I had growing up, right? So what Brian was saying, I know for a fact that at least to speak into the men that are in my life, I know for a fact that at least 95% of them would fall into that as well. So that's something that really, really stuck out. And I just wanted to touch on something as well that Dr. Joan was speaking about, talking about making the decision. It's not so much the traumatic event, it's your response to it. I remember when I found out. I remember when I found out that my brother had passed. I got a call from my mom, but I was in the middle of like getting ready for work. So I was in the bathroom. I was like washing my face. So when I answered the phone and I'm talking to my mom, I was standing in front of a mirror. So I was like basically seeing my own like response, reaction to what my mom was telling me. And it's interesting because I remember that it was either the same day. I know it was the same day, but it might have been literally like 5 minutes after I got off the phone with my mom. I remember saying to myself, like, this situation is either gonna it's gonna do one of two things to me. Like, it's either gonna make me regress and like not want to mess with anyone moving forward, or I can like try and go a different direction with it. I didn't know what that direction was. I just knew that it was going to be different to regressing from everyone around me that I loved. So, but I never really thought about how it's how you respond to the traumatic event in that moment that really dictates things moving forward. And I do remember making it was such a definitive decision, and I wasn't consciously thinking about it. It just came up. I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. And like relating it back to Brian, I feel like we all do that to like a certain extent in those situations. We go through these traumatic things when we grow up. We get into these fights or these altercations, and we just kind of act on impulse because we're like, that's how I'm supposed to respond to this. And then later on you realize, oh, like I reacted that way based on an impulse, but here's the reason why. And I think I said something recently to my friend that, when people do quote unquote bad things, a lot of people know what they're doing when they do something bad. But until they know the why behind why they've done it, then the behaviors don't change. So it's a constant learning process, and I think it's important that we have conversations like this because as I said before, we're all talking and you realize we've all gone through something like kind of similar, very similar, felt the same emotions. It's really not that uncommon. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Zamor. I appreciate I've known this young man. Can I just say, I've known this young man since he was you were in kindergarten?
No, I moved here. I was 7 years old. Yeah.
Oh my Lord. And I am
29, like 10 days.
ridiculous, right? I'm so proud of him, and to see him grow into this man, it's quite incredible. It's beautiful. So you're gonna make me cry. But IJ, what have you heard from these two men? Anything that kind of comes out at you that you'd like to kind of share with the rest of us? We really value you at this table, and I know we go back on it. Your age, it speaks to us because there's something special in how you roll. Let's be honest. And I'd like for you to kind of highlight anything that you've seen with these guys that you want to share with the audience.
I would like to say, what stood out to me was how Brian was talking about as he was being incarcerated. A lot of the people and guards in there, my dad used to tell me stories about like the guards would literally treat you like you're nothing. And my father just having to navigate, inside of prison with a lot of other people who deal with mental issues. And it's just, it kind of, I wouldn't say influence, but it had an effect on him because if you're around a lot of people who deal with these kind of things, it's going to affect you, it's going to affect how you live. And one thing with my dad is what kind of helped him was his belief, because he's Christian, and the Bible is one of the things that really helped him focus on what he wanted to do, and really get him on the right path. And he realized what he wanted to do in life, and instead of staying in that whole mind state, and he wanted to change. He wanted to make a change for the better. So yeah, what Brian was saying related to what some of the things my dad told me.
It's amazing. Thank you for sharing. My early part of my career, I worked in the criminal justice system. And one of the things that really stood out for me was when you went into the institutions and you will see so many of our young brothers behind bars, and most of the guards happen to be white. So it almost looks, slavery comes to mind, and how, yes, the guards, how they treat these folks. It makes you feel, I can see folks feeling less than. Already you're there, you've been criminalized because you've got, from the school system to child welfare, whatnot. There's a path that brings us, into custody. And once we're there, we're not really getting the help that we need, right? And so their work, I know now the government is really trying to push. They've put a lot of dollars into mental health within the institution now. I don't know how they're doing, though. We need to find out how they're doing, because one of the things that I'm hearing from most people who just happen to be Black is you would love to have a therapist that looks like you, that has some understanding. This is why we're having this conversation. Have some understanding about what you might be going through. So when we talk about, for me, and we're 25 minutes or so left into our talk. So I'm going to go into this part around the stigma, and I'm going to invite Karen to talk a little bit about that. But here's something to think about. Me, Sophia Brown Ramsey, grew up in Jamaica. I was born in Jamaica. Left Jamaica because my mother, I had one of my tragic situation was Jamaica. It was 2:00 in the morning. We got this knock at the door at I was with my grandmother, and my mother, who had been on her way to Kingston to, get her passports and get, for all of us, we wanted to kind of migrate to the United States. So she was getting her documents, was in a tragic car accident. She was in a taxi cab. And y'all know back in the day in Jamaica, and still now sometimes, you have a whole bunch of different people piling into one taxi cab, and then, the taxi driver drops you off at this, where you need to go on to the next person and so forth. So she was in a cab with, I think, 5 other people, actually. And he lost control. The taxi driver lost control of the car, and it went over kind of a ravine kind of thing, and rolled over. And my mother wasn't wearing her seatbelt, and she was thrown from the car. And then she hit the back of her head, and it was fatal. But she was heard before she died, saying the Lord's Prayer, because my grandmother made us do that every morning before we left for school. And then secondly, asking God to please take care of her children. And I often say when I speak, from my mother's dying lips to God's ears, and then to my aunts who brought me here to Canada, right? But when I was in Jamaica, some of the things that we would hear when, how many of us know Mas so-and-so who walks up and down the street, right? And he has no shoes on, and Jesus, just Mas Tommy, you just leave him alone, just feed him, give him some food, this and this, and I'm mad already. This is how they would talk about folks with mental illness, right? And so there's a stigma in our community to kind of seek help, or to say that your child needs some kind of mental health. And so when help, so when your child comes to you and say, I'm having some issues, it's very hard sometimes as parents for us to see that there's something we can do here. And it's not just enough to feed them. It's not just enough to make sure you can send them to school and, have the clothes and put a roof over their head. There's more to it, right? There's more that we all need to do than that. Karen spoke really, passionately about that. And I wonder, Karen, if I could invite you to kind of speak a little bit more about the stigma. I'd like for us to have maybe 10 minutes at the end of the conversation, because I'd like for us to talk a little bit about some solutions. What should we look for? What can we do? What's out there? So Karen, can I invite you to this conversation?
Absolutely. Well, we're going to start with the word mental.
Right.
That's where we started it with, to the point now where sometimes, again, the word mental for me meant crazy. I didn't equate the illness after that with it. It was the illness was the crazy. Even now, I find when you say things to people, mental challenges, it's the word mental. So now I can say I have my challenges. For me, people gravitate more to that. I have mind illness. It's that word mental for a lot of people. And for me, I didn't know that that mental was my mind. And that's where I'm talking to people, where people have a hard time with the word mental. I get it. So I'm like, my mind is playing with me. My mind is doing things, and I'm finding people are relating more. And then that's taking away from the stigma. When you say the word mental, for us in our Black community, the stigma with that is crazy, and no one wants to be equated to crazy. Then there's the look that goes with it, that I grew up thinking the look, well, for me, if it was a woman, no teeth, or man, no teeth, wrap up your hair, and you're wearing a bag, and you have a sign on the street. So mental meant that for me. Therapist meant that for me. So would I want to equate myself to that and go to that? No. And then with other people not being educated, saying that, no, she's crazy. Just like it said, Moss, this, that's a madman. Just leave that. Hold on a second. What is mad to you? And I still talk to myself. When they said I was talking to myself back then, it was because I was doing the seizures, which is partial seizures, where it's not when I drop down, I'm actually awake. And you're having a conversation with me, and I'll be talking about a whole different thing. That's where the craziness came in. But again, the education, and stop judging. And when I'm coming to you, when I've actually opened up, because opening up was hard, please do not compare me with anyone else or tell me your story. At that part, let me speak. Everyone in here just said they had to get it out or say something. Let me speak. Do not tell me about yesterday what happened to you when I'm telling you something, or everyone else. I said my name is Karen, and I said I'm having some issues. I'm going through, I don't have it. I don't want to hear that you don't have it or nobody else has it too. I just told you about me. Give me my chance to get it out. And that's where I say, get educated on this. And a lot of us now, yes, mental health, mental illness has come out, and everyone's saying, oh, yes, okay, no, you don't, because you need to get educated. We need to get educated and stop the judgment. There isn't a look to it. This is what mental illness looks like. This is what mental challenges look like. This is what having mental issues, like sometimes I'm like, oh my God, this is what it looks like. Beautiful, educated, professional. This is what I want to get everybody to know, what it looks like.
Real talk. Real talk. Real talk. I love it. I love it. Brian, let me invite you into this conversation. Talk to us about this. Talk to us about what are some of the stigmas.
Yeah, the stigma for men is you have to be tough. You have to thug it out. We don't talk about our emotions. With men, the social norm is that you stick it out, you toughen up, be a man, right? This is what society has taught us to believe, what we grew up being taught. So I mean, I think it's harder for men to actually express themselves because of what we grew up to believe.
That's right. And you know what? You're right. I do think it's harder. I do think it's harder for men. I'm going to even go further. I'm going to say perhaps harder for Black men.
But if I can add something, I find it's the women who come to see me first. But once the guys come, once they make the decision to come, they move so much faster. It's like whatever blocks them from coming, whether that is the stigma, whether that is the fear, whatever it is, the men always, one of their chief complaints that maybe even their spouse or a family member might bring is that the men don't talk. But actually, if you give the men the space to talk, they will talk, and that's not an issue. But they will also, when you give them if you give them kind of like the recipe and you say, okay, here's what's going to get you well, I have found that they will grab hold and just run with it. And one of the things that has actually been a challenge for me is to actually have the guys come, and then when they actually experience the first session, like it's a powerful deep dive. And what I find though is that sometimes the men, they get so afraid of like facing themselves that they will actually run the other direction. So some will come and they will actually just push through really quickly once they've made that decision. But the ones who come with a tentative decision about what it is that they want to do in counseling or therapy, they will kind of test the waters. And if it's too much for them all at once, they will actually run the other direction. The women, though, come. They know they need the support. They know they need the help, and they will come in, and they're quite comfortable diving into their feelings. But the women struggle with the persistence and the showing up of the same challenge over and over and over again. And it's kind of interesting how we just process things differently based on the gender, the gender differences.
It's great, Dr. Joan, because I love that you jumped in at that moment to kind of talk about that, how the differences between the genders. And so then I wanted to kind of ask some more, when Brian spoke about the stigma, how does that affect like personal relationships, particularly with your partners, in terms of if we aren't really looking at, we've got a situation here that we got to take care of. How does that affect relationships with your sweethearts?
Big time. I'm, like I said, I turned 29 next week.
Can't believe
but when everything was happening, or a lot of the events I was going through in the past couple of years, like I'm in my mid-20s, so by all standards, like I'm relatively young to be like going through certain things, right? And a big thing that happened to me was, my brother passes, and then I'm like trying to understand how to navigate this whole situation. And it I actually have no problem like admitting this, but basically I could not be like sexually involved with my partner at all. I had like no desire to, and it was because of this event that I had just gone through, right? But at the time I'm thinking like, this doesn't make sense. Like I'm a young dude, like why is this happening? Like it seems weird to me. And then one day I just messaged the group chat like with all my like guy friends, and I said, yo, like this is happening to me. Is this happening to anyone else? And as soon as I said that, like all my other friends who were the same age as me, who were like very close to my brother, who went through the same thing, they're like, yeah, like this is happening to me. And I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't say anything because I thought it made me look weak, blah, blah, blah. I ended up deciding to go to, like, me and my partner ended up going to couples therapy, right? To like talk through a lot of the things that were going on, because it was affecting the relationship in a bunch of different ways, right? But there's always like this big trickle down effect. And as Dr. Jones said, like it's really just getting there, because I've heard my entire life that either men aren't emotional or they're not supposed to be emotional. And what I know is that men are very emotional. It's just that we like to pick and choose when we show that, right? Whether it's to our partner, whether it's to our friends sometimes. And the issue with that happening with your partner is like you have a lot of men who eventually become quote unquote very emotional with their partner, like disclosing a lot of feelings that they have, but they don't know how to process those feelings on their own. So then what ends up happening is when, let's say, you and your partner break up, you've been using that partner as an emotional crutch, and now you're crippled without them, right? Because you don't know how to process these things. So you really have to like figure out over time how to address these things on your own. And just like Brian said, like a lot of it starts from like a really, really early age, like how men were just told to thug it out, you know? And
Yeah.
I listened to something today where this athlete was talking about this story with, there's like twins, a daughter and a son, and they're both running down the street and they both fall over the trip and hurt themselves. And the natural response of the parents is to like go to the daughter, and she's crying. They're like, it's okay, like is everything's gonna be fine. But then the natural response is to look at the boy and say like toughen up, like don't cry, you'll be fine, you know. And the response is very different. So you learn these things at such a young age that you just feel like, you know, it's okay to be tough, but it's also okay to like cry if something bad happens too. Like it doesn't make you any less weak. So these things all trickle down into your life and in relationship stuff as well.
Amazing.
I love what you have to say. If I could just offer a comment, you know, I'll get a lot of couples where there's one partner, typically the women come, and then, well, even if it's the guy who needs the help, the women will call me and basically check me out. And then I'll say, well, I need to speak to him in order for me to be, you know, even consider him as a client. So then I'll speak. And so oftentimes what will happen is you'll have couples that are coming. And what I do immediately with my couples is I actually separate them. And I do individual therapy with both, because even though they're having some issues as a couple, it's often the individual things that each one has to work out that is actually coming together and impacting on the couple anyways. So I'll say to them, I'll go off with each of you, I'll do your intensive sessions, which is usually 3 weekly sessions. And then after that, we take a breather and then we come back together, and then we can talk about, are the issues actually resolved, or are they lessened to some degree because now you both have worked out your individual issues. And of course, if they continue to have some of those issues, then we need to look at some of the decisions that they made in their traumatic moments and see how that actually has impacted the way that the relationship is operating right now. So I love that you brought that up some more, because it is so critical to know that the moments that we're experiencing right now, like the death of a family member, that is connected with some earlier moments as well. And that the overlap of those moments is going to impact on how we communicate, how much we relate, the type of communication that we actually engage in, whether that's more aggressive or whether that's more of the shutting down, or if we tend to want to run away in these moments. And so as you begin to teach each partner how their own traumatic history impacts on the now, and then how it impacts on the relationship, then you see that it smooths out quite quickly. Some take longer, but for the most part, the major events or the major issues that are toxic in the relationship will tend to disappear. And then, of course, life is ongoing. You're transitioning and transforming, and you're personally changing over time. So those things, you know, some things are always present, some things change.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I see that we're running short on time, and we touch a lot on therapy, but I wanted to speak on other resources. Personally, in my undergrad, I had access to a counselor because of my tuition. But after I left, I no longer had access to that. I had no money, so I couldn't afford to see a therapist for $100 to $150 an hour. So I was wondering if maybe Dr. Joan or anybody on the panel can speak to other resources available for people that may not have that financial stability.
Yeah, if anyone else wants to go, feel free. There is an organization, actually, there's two that I'm aware of. The second one, I can't remember her name right now, but there's an organization called FAMHAS, FAMHAS. And they were started because their sister actually, I think, committed suicide. And so they have been providing 2 counseling sessions for free to individuals from the Black community. So you want to check them out. I know BCAN is also offering some support along the lines of advocacy services. I myself am even looking into trying to get donors to work together so that I can get a pool of therapists, advocates, legal advocates, as well as community advocates, individuals who are, spiritual counselors and all of that stuff, a team of people to bring them together so that we can support people for free. In addition to that, I'm forgetting her name, but there is an organization right now that is also offering support. The Jamaica Canadian Association is also looking to very quickly put online a crisis hotline that folks can call. And those are just a few of the ones that I'm aware of that are just on the cusp of beginning. But perhaps Sandra and Brian and Zamer, even IJ can talk to that as well.
Me personally, I only know of this one therapist. Her name is Genevieve Allo, and her organization is called Corner Counseling. And I mean, when it comes to, I think she charges normal rates though. It's about that'll be couples counseling, $200 an hour. So I can't provide much help, but I will say that when it comes to relationships, it does have a big impact. My relationship, my girlfriend, she always talks about I'm lacking empathy, I'm not compassionate enough, right? And so one of the things I like to move with is that one of the things I believe is that the highest form of learning is unlearning.
Absolutely.
So right now I'm going through the stage of unlearning all the things that I've learned throughout these years to learn something new, to learn how to communicate with her better.
Awesome.
And so that's the only organization that I know of is Corner Counseling. But I did have a prior arrangement that I needed to attend to, so I can no longer stay on this call. It was very much a pleasure talking to everybody. Thank you for inviting me, but I really have to go now. So thank you guys once again.
Thank you.
Take care.
Sophie,
And I hope you guys all the best, okay?
Thank you. Sophie,
Okay,
I quickly wanted to say this is one of the reasons that I'm saying I would love to reach out to the government, because I personally don't have a lot of organizations that I can say that I can go to that don't charge. Fortunately for me, my benefits cover what I can, but there are a lot of people that have reached out to me that are asking that don't have the benefits. And I would like for the government to fund like Dr. Joan you so that you can, 1 or 2 therapy sessions couldn't help me. I would like to hear for men that I see that are going through this, I'd like to go someplace where I can hear a Zamor. And Zamor said when he went into his group and shared, is anybody going through this? Everyone said that they were. When I came out and said I was going through this, okay, I'm going through this. We need the government to put more funding to the professionals that can help the community that does need it. So that's where I'm going to say, we're struggling to say, I'm still getting, I have to pay. I want you to help me and not pay. Give me some of that money.
I think that's a possibility. And this is why Keep Six and BCAN and other organization, Roots Community Services, the Jamaican Canadian, if we decide to pool our resources, that's what we need to be doing. And even going after government funds, government right now wants to see people collaborate, right? I've always said this is my tagline, stronger together. Right. And so even if, nothing else from this call, but we got together as us in this community right now and decide, okay, what are some of the funding opportunities out there? Let's put something together. We can do this. This is why. Before we go, we've only got a few seconds, but I have to just give it to the men that showed up. You all showed up. You guys showed up, and really speaking your truth. You cannot know how many other folks you actually helped in the conversation, Zamora, in the conversation, IJ, that you guys had, in the conversation that my brother that left had. Brian, all of you guys coming together, and my sister Karen. You are such a real talk, man. You are incredible. You're incredible. I can listen to you forever. I appreciate you. Dr. Joan.
I want to thank you guys.
I'm going to have to thank Dr. Joan. Dr. Joan, wicked man. And you're from Westmoreland like me. No. You're amazing. You've brought some things together here today. And I could tell in terms of the kind of therapist you are, you really listen to folk. You really listen to what they have to say. Go ahead, Karen.
I want to just again say I can't remember his name, the 15-year-old. What's his name? Okay. I honestly want to say to you, especially being our future coming out there, I want to say personally for me, thank you for coming on and just seeing what you're doing. You're not out there being what they say that you are. You're showing that your brains and where you're coming from with your dad's story. You've chosen this way to turn it around. And Brian left, but I'm taking away what he says. We have to unlearn what we've learned to learn more. Like I'm getting that from him. Zamora, I'm touched by you. Just hear this panel to see, and I know we're on the men a lot because we hear us women talk, but to see what is happening now with our men and see the intelligence, the brightness, the vulnerability of our men right now. It's there. It's there. It's there. Stop focusing on the little pieces that are negative, and look at the big part of us that are so positive.
Wow.
I'm done.
No, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Go ahead, Jada. Sorry. I know you have something.
I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much to everyone for sharing their stories, for being vulnerable with us.
Yes.
This is so important for our community, and just thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you. So to Keep Six, thanks for partnering with us. This was wonderful. I'm going to say let's do it again. IJ, I don't know if you've got some last words for us, and then I'll invite Dr. Joan to also say her last piece before we go.
I just wanted to say that we need to focus on changing the narrative, which reaching out and explaining the problems we're going through should not be looked at as being weak or being soft. It should be looked at as being strong, because it takes a strong person to let people know the things and the problems that are going on inside of them. Especially because as what men are supposed to be in today's society, it's supposed to be strong and they're supposed to, just toughen through their situations and things like that. So we need to focus on changing the narrative. And I wanted to say thanks to everybody for having me, and everything you guys said was really inspirational, and I loved it. It was amazing. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Zamora, I'll invite you to say your last word before, and have Dr. Jones say the last word.
Yeah, honestly, just wanted to say thank you for putting on a panel like this. Said it multiple times before, but it's always important to have conversations like this because you never know who's either listening or who's watching.
Right.
And these conversations can have a big impact on people that you, quite frankly, never even met. So it's good. It's good to have these conversations. I'm just grateful to be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Joe?
I think we give COVID this really, it's kind of like this oppressive presence over us. But I actually want to look at COVID a slightly different way, that it's giving us an opportunity to really unearth some of these things that we especially Black people need to look at. It's giving us time to kind of sit still. And in the stillness, as busy as we are online, you're still sitting with self. And it is such a hard thing to sit with self unless you begin to go through that process of examining self And because it's the examination of self that's then going to grow you and let you see all of those things that are holding you back. I think there's such a wonderful opportunity for us to begin to talk with one another in a space like this, but also in that therapeutic space. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing with BCAN, and you'll see, in future announcements come out of this, but we want to invite folks to come to a talk series where we just get together and, based on the needs of the group, I'll do some presentations and do some education, and then, give us an opportunity to just kind of do what we just did, just have this ease of conversation and this beautiful way of just, kind of like just growing off one another and then launching the conversations in ways that will be useful. Out of that, we're hoping to then build, further to that so that we can offer greater support. So Karen, I hope you'll join us on that endeavor, and, however the panel that's here wants to be involved, I would welcome you to join with us. And for those of you that are watching, I was noticing that Wendy was offering some comments. She mentioned the Women's Health in Women's Hand Community Health Center is a place that we can go to access resources. And I saw, I think it's Syra, that was also just expressing thanks. So for anyone who's interested in just coming together in a group, it's a free group. We're just going to come together and talk. And from there, we can decide if there is any need for anything greater. But for now, it's called Let's Talk. And we're going to be just dialoguing about the things that matter to us in terms of improving our health and well-being. So just wanted to put that out there to the audience.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. You guys are amazing. You're ambassadors. You're just outstanding folk. And the fact that we called on you and you showed up, I can't say anything else. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay, and we'll see you again soon. Karen, you rock.
Thank you. Take care. All you guys did. Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
You are so amazing, my friend.
Thank you.
Take care, okay? We'll talk offline.
All right.